A cold February afternoon. A narrow, desolate road in the outskirts of Philadelphia. The wind cuts through the bare trees, rustling the dead leaves scattered along the frozen ground. Further up the road, in a patch of overgrown weeds, something catches the eye of a young man walking through the area. At first, he thinks it's just a discarded box, something forgotten, left behind. But as he moves closer, his breath catches in his throat. Inside the box, wrapped in an old blanket, is the lifeless body of a young boy. Panic sets in. His hands tremble as he stumbles back. He wants to believe his mind is playing tricks on him, but the truth is right there, staring back at him. A child, no older than 4, stripped of his name, his identity, and his life. Little did anyone know, this case would haunt the country for decades. The police arrived within the hour. The cardboard box sat near the roadside, partially hidden by weeds. It was the kind used to package a bassinet, a cradle for an infant. But there was no softness, no warmth. Only a tragedy no one could explain. The boy's body was small, fragile, weighing barely 30 pounds. His hair had been crudely chopped, his skin bore signs of severe malnourishment. There were bruises, fading, healing, fresh. It was clear. This child had suffered. But who was he? Where had he come from? And, most disturbingly, who had left him there? The case shocked Philadelphia. Detectives worked tirelessly, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might recognize him. The boy's fingerprints were taken. Flyers with his image were distributed across the state. Newspapers ran the story, calling for answers. But none came. No reports of a missing child matched his description. No desperate parents stepped forward. It was as if he had never existed. As days turned into weeks, the investigation took a darker turn. Some believed he had been abandoned by a desperate family, perhaps an unwed mother ashamed to claim him. Others whispered of a cruel foster home, a place where children were neglected, forgotten. Then there were the rumors, chilling theories that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned detectives. Had he been a victim of human trafficking? A child sold and discarded like an object? Or worse, was he the result of something even more sinister? The cardboard box itself became a crucial piece of evidence. It had once held a bassinet sold at a JCPenney store in Upper Darby. Investigators traced every single purchase, dozens of them. None led to an answer. The blanket that wrapped the boy? Made of inexpensive cotton flannel, common, mass-produced, impossible to track. Then there was the haircut. His golden brown hair had been hastily cut, uneven and rough, as if someone had been in a hurry. Some believed it was done to hide his identity. Others wondered if it was a sign of something even darker, an attempt to clean him up after death. The autopsy revealed he had suffered prolonged abuse. Bruises covered his body. His ribs protruded from his thin frame. He had never known comfort, never known safety. And yet, no one came forward to claim him. Weeks later, a woman came forward with an eerie claim. She said she had seen something. A mysterious vehicle parked near the crime scene the night before the body was found. A man and a woman stood beside it, speaking in hushed voices. The woman appeared to be crying. And then, just like that, they were gone. Could they have been the boy's parents? A couple forced to abandon their child in the dead of night? Or were they something much worse? The investigation continued, but every lead collapsed into dead ends. Months passed. The boy was buried in a pauper's grave, his tombstone reading only, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." But the mystery was far from over. Because years later, something would happen, something that would reopen the case, and change everything. Years had passed since the lifeless body of a young boy was discovered inside a discarded cardboard box in Philadelphia. The case had grown colder by the day, each lead fading into nothing. But then, something changed. A woman came forward with a story so disturbing, so chilling, that it would shake the investigation to its core. Her name was Martha, and she claimed she knew exactly what had happened to the boy in the box. Martha sat in a dimly lit police station, her hands trembling as she spoke. Her voice was low, haunted by memories she had tried to bury. She claimed that when she was a child, her mother, a cruel, sadistic woman, had purchased a young boy. Not adopted. Not taken in out of kindness. Bought. According to Martha, the boy had lived in her home, locked away, starved, beaten. A prisoner in his own life. She described nights filled with muffled cries. Days of endless suffering. And then, one night, it all came to a horrifying end. Martha's mother had snapped. She beat the boy relentlessly until he could no longer scream, no longer move. He was gone. And what did they do next? They dumped his body in the box, wrapped him in a blanket, drove out to the edge of Philadelphia, and left him there, like trash. Martha claimed she had lived with the guilt for decades. The nightmares never stopped. And now, she could no longer stay silent. She had to tell the truth. But was it really the truth? Investigators were stunned by Martha's confession. It was more detailed than anyone had ever given. It sounded real. It felt real. But there was a problem. No evidence. Martha's mother had passed away years earlier. No paper trail existed to confirm that she had ever taken in a child. No neighbors, no records, nothing to prove that Martha's story was true. Investigators searched for any shred of supporting evidence. They checked the home she had lived in as a child, dug into old records, questioned anyone who might remember. And yet, once again, the case led to a dead end. Martha's claims were horrifying, but without proof, the mystery remained. Over the years, detectives followed every lead, every rumor, every theory. They chased the idea that he was a lost child from a traveling carnival. They investigated a nearby foster home, which had a history of abuse. They even explored the possibility that the boy had never been reported missing because his family didn't want him to be found. But with each new path, they hit a wall. And the boy, still nameless, still voiceless, remained buried under a simple gravestone. Until decades later, when technology changed everything. For over 60 years, the identity of the boy in the box was a mystery. A case that haunted Philadelphia. But then, in 2022, forensic experts made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the true crime world. DNA technology has advanced. With a small genetic sample taken from the boy's remains, forensic genealogists worked tirelessly to trace his family line. And after all those years, they found something. A name. A real name. For the first time, the world finally knew who he was. But the case was far from over. Because now that they knew his name, they needed to uncover the truth. Who had killed him? Why was he never reported missing? And what secrets had been buried with him for more than half a century? For decades, the world knew him only as the boy in the box, a nameless, forgotten child left to decay in the cold. But in 2022, everything changed. Through advanced forensic DNA testing, investigators finally uncovered his real identity, a name that had been buried in the past for over 60 years. Joseph Augustus Sorelli. A little boy who had once been full of life. And now, after all this time, the biggest question remained: who killed him? And why had his name been erased from history? Once Joseph's name was revealed, investigators immediately searched for answers about his family. Who were his parents? Why was he never reported missing? And more importantly, were they responsible for his death? Through genealogical research, authorities identified Joseph's mother. Her name was not publicly released at first, but records confirmed she had given birth to him in 1953. The shocking part? She was alive for decades after his death, yet she never came forward. Why? What was she hiding? As for Joseph's father, investigators discovered his identity as well, though he had passed away before the case was solved. Neither parent had ever reported him missing. To law enforcement, that was deeply suspicious. But there was another problem. Both parents were now deceased. If they had held the answers, they had taken them to the grave. With Joseph's identity now confirmed, the case shifted back to the crime itself. Who had inflicted the bruises? Who had stripped him of his dignity, leaving him battered and lifeless in a cardboard box? Investigators followed two main theories. Theory 1, the family's involvement. Joseph's parents had never reported him missing. He had suffered from clear signs of abuse. Was he an unwanted child? Did someone in his family cover up his murder? Some detectives believed his mother or another relative may have been involved, possibly hiding a dark family secret. But there was another possibility. Theory 2, a stranger's crime. Joseph could have been kidnapped or given away. Some believe he was never part of his biological family's household at all. Was he taken by someone else and then abused and discarded? This theory aligned with Martha's confession. The woman who once claimed her abusive mother had taken in a little boy and killed him. But despite the theories, no arrests were ever made. No single person was ever officially named as Joseph's killer. The discovery of Joseph's name changed the case forever. For over 60 years, he had been buried in a simple grave that read, America's Unknown Child. But now, his gravestone bears his true name, Joseph Augustus Sorelli. Though his case remains unsolved, his story is no longer forgotten. And yet, the biggest question of all still lingers. Who took Joseph's life? And why did they want the world to forget him? Maybe one day, someone will come forward. Maybe one day, a missing piece of the puzzle will finally emerge. Until then, Joseph remains a haunting mystery, a child lost in the shadows of time. But at least now, he has his name back.